And Celeste, we have Debra Stonebarger joining us now, and I think the timing on this interview just could not be better.
Yeah.
What with now there's a new focus. All right, so we have the disappointing news yesterday that there was no DNA match in the CODIS system.
Yeah.
But they do have the ability now to do the genetic genealogy investigative work on this DNA, which, by the way, was really how they cracked the Brian Kohberger case, that horrible story out of the University of Idaho, the students there. So I think maybe now would be a good time to bring Debra on.
I think you're right. Debra Stonebarger, forensic science expert. Debra, thank you for your time. You know, we've heard time and time again that it could be technology or some of the detective work when it comes to DNA that could in fact help solve this case. What are your thoughts on where detectives, what they're looking for now and maybe where they go from here?
I think you're correct about that. The detectives and the investigations finding the evidence or the crime scene specialists, that is a key point if DNA is going to be helpful in this matter. Right now, that's not a guarantee because we don't know the quantity or quality of the DNA that has been collected. We do understand that the DNA recovered from inside the glove that may or may not have been related to the crime scene. We do know that that did not hit against CODIS. However, it can be compared to other samples as those come up. The genealogy is another area that you guys have touched on, as well as we still don't know what's happening with the DNA samples from inside Miss Guthrie's home.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the genetic genealogy. We know you're a forensics expert, and that's a big part of why we wanted to have you on today. How does that work exactly? How has it worked in other high-profile cases, and what will be the method they will follow in this case?
If they have the correct types of samples, any DNA, regardless of whether you're using genealogical methods or familial searches or CODIS searches, do need a reference to compare to. But what can happen with genealogy or genealogical DNA is that more databases can be searched, voluntary databases can be used by law enforcement. So what can happen is, even though where CODIS, someone has to have committed a crime to be in that particular database, that's not the case with the family and voluntary genealogical DNA databases. So in this case, what can happen is they can compare that type, looking for people with similar DNA profiles or some characteristics matching at some loci, and then they can develop profiles related to possible relatives of someone who might have left DNA at the home.
How far removed do you have to be in a case like that? So here we got the doorbell ring video cam. Disappointing that who knows, maybe somebody already did step forward and say, I know who this guy is, and maybe they're developing that lead. But literally, so whoever this guy is, he's not in the CODIS system. We don't even know if he's from the United States or perhaps if he's from another country. That's one thing we've got to look at.
That is very true.
If whoever it is, if it was even like a great uncle or, you know, somebody two generations or two steps removed from the family, are they able to even kind of glom onto that and develop their lead?
Yes, if they've got DNA from someone who committed this crime, that's a big if. However, yes, even several generations removed, even it doesn't have to be like fully patrilineal from the father or matrilineal from the mother, meaning grandfather or grandmother. It can be siblings, it can be uncles and cousins that can eventually lead to a profile. Basically, if they can identify people who might be related to the perpetrator of this crime, however distantly, at least within a few generations, if not more, then what can happen with that is that generates new leads of people who might be related to the the profile that they were checking. Once they find those relatives, then they can go and whether or not they have relatives in that same database, the ones that are present can be interviewed, and then you can look into their existing relatives and collect reference samples that way. And then you'll have hopefully a reference DNA sample that can be compared to a DNA sample that was collected from the crime scene. But that is a big if. There has to be meaningful DNA that was collected from the crime scene. Just because there's DNA there that's foreign to anyone living there or friends or family, that does not mean it's the perpetrators who left their DNA behind.
So, Debra, we have just one quick minute here in 30 seconds, if you can tell me. We have a question from Darren Lloyd in our chat on YouTube. His question is there a worldwide database that exists for DNA?
About 30 seconds left.
Not as of yet, no.
Okay. So it could be helpful if this is a U.S., well, I mean, it's beyond... the database is a U.S. database.
It is.
CODIS. But if people, whether they did 23andMe or whatever, if they even did it in France, they could connect to this case, right?
Hopefully.
And interagency comparison as well could help with that.
Okay. Debra, always interesting. We really learn a lot when you're our guest. We appreciate you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Debra.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.